Alright guys, welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. So today what we're going to be looking at is motion vector or delta movement. It really depends on what version you're using. It used to be called motion vector, but now it's delta movement. So these are client-side blocks. They're basically there to get the velocity of the particular entity in question, and they can be found under the entity procedures data tab, and if you scroll just a little bit down, they are right around here. Now older versions don't have the vector, or I think it's what's it called? Yeah, vector support. So it's not the purple block, but you will have the blue blocks that you can actually get the velocity. Now, with that being said, there are some catches with them. Like I said, they are on client side, so they might not always work on server side or be a little bit different on server side, and that is going to be completely normal. It really depends on what you're doing with it, but if you need specific script to actually just get the motion vector from the entity directly, I do have that script. We'll be taking a look at that later on, which basically does the same thing as running it on server side, but I'll get into that in just a little bit. But it might be easier for certain cases that you will have to get something from server side, like if you were on working with a GUI or something like that. You can still get the server side variable, but it would have to be passed over and everything like that. So it's a little bit more complicated, but we can take a look at that in a little bit. All right, so basically let's go ahead and print out just the simple vector and see basically what's going on with it. And then we can kind of see what's going on with the print block, because this is a good time to actually show the differences between the print block for the player and the print block for the actual text, because they're a little bit different. So let's go ahead and save this and pop into game, and then we'll give it a quick test. All right, so I have a chicken called Doug here, and if we right click on him, we can see that his motion vector for the client side, which is the render thread, that one is all 0, 0, 0, and when he was on server side, like on the server side one, you can see the motion vector is actually being pushed downwards. So what's happening with that is, my best guess is entities have a natural gravity, kind of like a push towards the bottom of the world, and basically what happens is when the entities are getting pushed down that way, the server side is basically acting as the force for keeping them on the ground and stuff. You'll probably find this most common in other games and stuff like that, like platformers and stuff like that too, right? Now if we capture when he starts moving, we can kind of see a little bit of a difference that's going on, but he needs to start moving there. So we can see that in this case, his motion vector for X, Y, and Z on client side is a little bit different. And now the server side also has some values for the left and right as well. So the left and right, like the X and Z positions for the movement vector, do change a little bit based on the direction that they're going and everything like that. But the velocity down is always going to be a negative. So if you need something like an X and Y velocity, you can still technically test that from the I believe the actual server side for the blocks, but there's always going to be a constant down push. So that's just the one thing with motion delta, right? Or movement delta, or whatever it's called. And it just pops out an egg. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back into MCreator and give a quick test and change some things up. All right, so that was the print block, and now we're going to be printing out the message to the player. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because if you're constantly testing with the printout message, then it's going to be a little bit different, because this is only running on server side, and for things like client side blocks, these will be drastically different for the amount that is actually going to be returning. So you can see that we have a client side block here, and this is going to be running on server side. So basically this will take priority, because this is the thing that's actually connected, right? So this will run, and then this will run, but basically this runs after this block is executed. So basically it's going to be on server side. So let's go ahead and see basically what value we get, and we can test this by just basically right-clicking on the entity like we have been doing. All right, so we're in game, we're going to right-click on him, and you can see that he wasn't moving anywhere. He had that downwards push, but he wasn't actually moving on the X and Z. We can try again, and it's the same number. So let's see if we can get it. So when he starts moving up or down, we can see if that motion is gone. We'll have to wait for him to start moving a little bit though. So I think I got that one. So his velocity was a little bit further, going down a little bit more. So hopefully that makes sense. I do have one more thing to show, and that's the script that I put together. Now before we go into that, I'm going to clear the weather and make it a little bit more easier to hear. All right. So I do have a command that we can check for the motion of the entity, and this is going to be on server side, unfortunately, but it does allow you to get the data for the entity. Now, with this script that I provided, it's only server side only, but it does allow you to get the motion directly from the data. So the data being, if we were to do /data, and we can find in here that we have one called motion, and it should be somewhere in here. We'll find it eventually. Motion right here. So this is basically the same thing that those blocks are using, and we can see that there is an array of different data. So there is one right here. I guess it's more of like a vector, but it is technically array in JSON format. So we have our first one. This is the X, Y, and then Z for the motion vector. Again, data is technically on both client and server, but because we need to obtain it through using a command, it's going to be on server side because commands are run on server side. So that's the only unfortunate part of how things work with that. Now, I did work on an entire script. It is available on my Discord server under the sharing folder or channel. And it basically makes use of that particular thing. So we're first getting the target of the entity. And we'll just move these out of the way here. And then what we're doing is we're checking if that entity is not null. So the variable is not null. That's really important because if it is null, it might not work. It might actually crash the game. So after that, we're basically getting the string from the data. So we're actually running the command here. And we're running the data/get entity, and then we're using the UUID of that entity that we basically right-clicked on or have basically assigned to here. And then we're doing a space, and then we're doing motion to get the motion value. After that, what we're doing is we're replacing the value at the very end. This is a closing bracket for the value that is printed. Now, I might be able to show you what that command actually looked like when we printed it out. Let's see here. This is basically what we're getting for the value. So it says Doug has the following entity data. So Doug being the custom name. If it's just a regular entity, it will be like chicken or whatever. So we use the display name for that. And then it has a colon. And then we have our starting and ending bracket. We also have commas and spaces in here that we don't necessarily need as well. So we're basically going to be, what this script does is basically formats the values down to just the numbers so we can pass it over to the actual script itself. So let's close that again. So what we're doing is we're removing this, and then we're just leaving it with an empty block here for text, and that will delete that particular part from the string. The next replace block here is basically getting the display name of the entity followed by space, And then we're basically getting that starting part right up to the bracket there, and we're just removing that with an empty block here. And then the last thing that we do is there was D's in the text. If we go back here, we can actually see that. So we have a D here, we have a D there, and we have a D there. So we need to remove those from the actual text because that's not going to be a number format. So we do that through just a final pass with a replace block, and we're just using an empty block for that. That basically just stores the number, the commas, and the 2 spaces between the values. So we can save that to the motion part. After that, what we have is a first repeat block. This is just going to get the length of the motion variable, which is what we assigned here. We then make sure that the value is not going to, or the index value is not going to go over the length of the actual variable. If it is, we're breaking out of the loop. Last is where the body of the script is happening. We're testing for the index plus 1 index, or index plus 1, for a comma. Now, if it finds that comma, this is going to be the first value for our X motion. So we need to get from the beginning of the string to the index at the start here, not the part where this is, because that's going to include the comma. We don't want the comma, right? So what we do is we just get the index, which is just before the comma. And then we're basically updating the string, so it is basically applying the substring of motion, and we're increasing that number by 2, so we include that space that's after the comma, and then we're going to the length of the position. So basically the index plus 2 is where our starting point is, and then the length at the very end, and then we break out of the loop. Now, if it doesn't find that comma, what it's going to do is just keep checking for every character until it does find a comma. Now, there's always going to be 2 commas in here, so we can use that to basically check for the first condition. After that, we reset the variable for the index, and then we run a second loop. This is going to get our Y and Z variables. Similar process. Only really difference is we're going to start at the very beginning and get the index for this one, very similar to what we did up here. But the other one, we're going to start at the position of the just after the space, and then we're going to get the length of the motion, and that will get us our Z value, and then we break out of the loop, and that cancels. After that, all I'm doing is basically applying this to a vector, so we can test for it later on and easily pass it between scripts. So in this case, we're using motion X, motion Y, and motion Z that we got from these particular blocks here. And then we're just printing out through server side, because this is going to be a server side variable, basically what our values are. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense of what's going on. There's a lot of little parts and stuff here. Again, the command part is going to be server side only. That's the only downside to this particular method. If we were able to get the data from using MBT or something like that, that was outside of the actual values of the entity, it would be a little bit easier to do, because then we could basically go ahead and just run that for both client and server. But unfortunately, we can't use MBT for that. So we're stuck with using commands and getting the value of what is printed out from that command output. So let's go ahead and just run this a really good quick test, and then we'll see basically what's going on with it. All right, so we can right click on the entity, and he was moving at the very second that we right clicked on him. So we can see that it's on the left and right for the motion. We'll click on him again, and we can see that we still have that downward motion. I'm pretty sure it's the same value as well. So basically we can test that the entity is moving. And again, if we right click on him when he's basically falling, we can see that that value increases for the downwards thrust. So you could technically make a condition to make sure that the Y value for the entity is not the default state where it's going straight down. So for example, we have this value right here. This is the default motion that is keeping them on the ground, right? That exact value. So we could make that a condition where we would test to make sure that it was not that value or less than. I would probably say less than that value. And if it is, then the entity is actually falling. So it's greater than 0 in like actual speak. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully you had a good day. Again, the script that I provided for this particular test through the motion vector is available on my Discord server under the sharing tab. So you can use that if you want. So yeah, that's basically all there is to it. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, rate the video, let me know in the comments what you liked about it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.